Hi, namaste. Hello, all. Hello to the panelists. Just before I introduce everybody, some housekeeping rules. Please keep your questions coming. We're going to have a Q&A session at the end of it, right? You could also tweet, follow us on Facebook and Insta, and tweet us on the program, and follow us on LinkedIn. So yeah, and then this session will be recorded and be made available on YouTube as well. So you don't have to take copious notes. Anyway, with that, I would like to start the session. I'd like to introduce the esteemed panelists today. And to start with, happy Vinayaka Chaturthi to all. Thanks for taking time out on our first festive day to be part of us and to be part of the community. I'd like to welcome Vivek and Ankush. Vivek from Chumbak, who's the founder and CEO, and Ankush, who's the director of growth and markets for Anand Sweets. Is of course he's part of the family as well. And Sanjay, do you also weigh in, during the session? Give your expert inputs on Omnichannel as well. Sanjay is a co-founder of Nice. So yeah, I want to start off by asking both of you guys. I mean, take your time and share with us your sort of observations, because there's so much of conversation today on going direct to consumers, and pandemic has played a role, right? Things have become drastically different in the last year or so. Pre-pandemic, you had the liberty and the choice of being both, physical, offline, and online, like digital model. But today, people are not going to malls, stores are empty. How are you guys dealing with it in your respective industries? Because you're both present online as well as offline. I want to start with you, Vivek.
So, firstly, thanks Vidya, for having us. Thanks, Sanjay, and thanks, Nice. It's always a pleasure to be invited to speak at these panels and forums. I think from a perspective of the stores versus online, I think for us, and speaking from our own kind of experience that has been there, we've always kind of looked at online and offline. How do I say? It's like, one of these very same but different kind of quotes that people use, where at the end of the day, both of the people both the people who are coming to each, either an online or an offline, they're both consumers of yours. So, and for our brand, we've always had our own stores where we run and own our own stores. We don't work with franchisees. We've never been in distribution, I think, in the past couple of years. And where the consumer's experience should be completely equal. In channel is just a matter of fact in terms of where the consumer will buy it. One of the interesting things that we found out even pre-pandemic was that almost 32% of our consumers were kind of traversing the entire kind of gamut of channels. So for example, a consumer could start offline and then realize that, listen, it's just easier to buy online and then buy from office or home and stuff like that. Or another consumer would start online by having either organically been there or through one of our advertisements on across social or something like that, but then walked into a mall or something and say, hey, isn't this the same brand, and walked in and then never gone back online. So we've seen this kind of change that's kind of slowly, obviously with the pandemic, accelerated quite a lot, where consumers have kind of moved on quite a lot to online. uh, we've always been an offline first kind of brand, where almost 70% of our revenue came from offline and retail stores, both in high street and in malls. But I think post pandemic, this is kind of accelerated to it's almost a 50-50 now. And we see this kind of while online, and we've seen a whole bunch of new consumers also coming in online, not just the older consumers who are in our stores coming in now to buy online, but we've seen a whole bunch of new consumers coming online. We see that this kind of growth of online will continue, but I don't think any of us are ready to write off retail and saying that consumers will not go back to malls, the consumers will not go back to stores. In the last quarter, not in, like in the last month and a half or even 2 months, we've seen encouraging signs of people slowly kind of coming back after the second wave, slowly coming back to our stores. And while it's not the kind of same numbers as what we were doing earlier, but it's close to about 70-75% of numbers, but maybe about 60% of walk-ins. So people are coming in and buying a little bit more than what they used to buy pre-pandemic. So our average kind of order values have also gone up. So I think, for us, it'll always be a kind of this hybrid model where to us, what matters is the consumer. So if a consumer's journey is, great online, and the consumer's journey has to be great offline. So for that, that's important to us.
Thanks, Vivek. I mean, very interesting stats to see how, you've sort of, I will want to ask you more, perhaps after I speak with Ankush, in terms of how you sort of weighed on some of these decisions and how you took those calls and what triggered this sort of change in consumer behavior per se. Ankush, I mean, I've always been fascinated with Anand Sweets. Like I mentioned offline, I've been ordering through Swiggy. I've never been to any of your stores at all. I don't even know where your stores are, right? But I always thought the packaging is fantastic. It is gift worthy, right? Whenever I get a pack of Anand Sweets, it's so good that I don't even open it, right? It is so good you don't want to even destroy it. So I'm being in the business that you are in, this is the sweets business. Have you seen this change? What has been pandemic experience post-pandemic? What has changed?
So I think, obviously the whole, I'm not going to repeat the whole aspect of what Vivek just said, where, during the pandemic, how online became more and more relevant. That is an obvious thing where people stopped going out. But I think one very, very interesting thing which came about was that all these years, what we've tried to build with the customer is trust, right? And trust in terms of product quality, trust in terms of the quality of ingredients we use, something which is safe for children to use. I can get a box of Anand and consume it without being worried about it, because I know that I trust the brand, right? And that is something which was an afterthought before the pandemic. But during the pandemic, there were so many times when I visited so many stores and customers came and told me that this is the first outing of ours, and Anand is a place we are coming the first time. This is the food we are trying during the pandemic. Yours is a place we are coming and eating this food and consuming your stuff because we trust your brand. And I think that for me was this big revelation that it takes decades to build trust, and it's not something which comes, it's a very slow build process, and it's not the benefit you won't reap immediately. But when a pandemic like this has really taught you that all of that effort doesn't go in vain, it actually accelerates who you are, makes you a stronger brand to the customer. So I think with the pandemic has only taught me that while the brand is important, the tenets of the brand, which is who do you stand for? I mean, we stand for quality, we stand for packaging. No matter what happens, we stick to that core, and the times will change, but you don't change, and that's what the customer kind of appreciates. So I think that was a very big learning and almost validation of our hard work over the years.
Right. I just want to continue on that same thought. Did you envisage a time that you're going to be selling in only online, like for the last year or so? What was the last year? What happened?
Yeah, so I think,
how did you reorganize the supply chain? You present outside of Bangalore. Did the selling on Swiggy and Zomato became more a necessity than a luxury? What's your mix of selling directly from your website or your app or social media presence? How are you looking at this whole landscape? Because people are still consuming food, largely, even though they are not going out, even though they don't go out. So what was your experience?
Yeah. So I think our industry traditionally has been a very offline industry, and whenever you spoke about like how groceries was, right? Anybody said, will you buy groceries online, till Big Basket came and disrupted? He said, no, I want to go and see if the vegetables are fresh, if they are not fresh. So there is a very personal element of touch and feel. And we always thought, our industry also, agar mithai fresh hai to hum kharidenge, right? I want to go and see what is available. So that myth was totally broken. Where when the online started to pick up, and online when it not so much the website, but these food aggregators, Swiggy, Zomato, came in. I think we slowly realized that, like you're a perfect example. You've never been to a store, right? It's the once you discover the brand, once you eat our products and the quality, you become a repeat customer. So for us, initially, a Swiggy, Zomato. Right now, we are on Amazon, Flipkart. We are on some commerce apps. We are on our commerce app. All of this accounts to about 40% of our business today, from what it was 5% of our business. And while retail is steadily growing, coming back to Vivek's point, where offline, even I believe, will never go out of fashion. Offline will be your experience centers. You need, for us, our stores are experience centers where our name, people will look around and see our name and familiarize with it, and online becomes a repeatable kind of behavior for them. So this is a trend which we've seen where repeatability, especially on festivals and seasons, has become through online because of convenience. Nobody wants to go out of the house. They know that Anand ka product hai, it's safe. I have a Ganesh Puja at home. I need to order laddu. So it's very easy for me to order and get it delivered in half an hour. But if I have a wedding to attend, if I have a wedding to plan at home, I will go to the store to discover what products, how to keep it, how to package it, how to gift it. So currently, I feel the gifting still has an offline element, but convenience and day-to-day consumption has largely moved to online.
Fantastic point. Vivek, I want to check with you what's your experience as a, because you guys are in a very different category. Chumbak is like, stuff that you want to buy for fun, for home, for office. So how has been what's been your observation of your consumer, how things change for you? Because it's also largely discretionary, right? Sweets, at least you can categorize for, it's part of the culture, and for occasions you have to buy, and this exchange and all of that stuff.
Sweets make you happy.
Whereas Chumbak flipping, huh?
Sweets
Sorry?
make you happy, I said.
Sweets make you happy, yes, of course.
Hopefully, Chumbak products also make you happy, but yeah.
Very good to hear that. Tell us more. Tell us more. Yeah.
So I
How
think
has things changed?
Yeah, I think from a consumer perspective, 2-3 things have changed. So one of the things, what we saw last year was obviously a lot of our categories, which were, for example, in travel and a lot of the fashion accessories or even fashion, came to quite a big had a huge drop, like almost a 70% drop in terms of sales in any of these categories, also even online. I think because people were not obviously going out anywhere, didn't need new clothes, didn't need new shoes, didn't need new wallets, definitely didn't need a passport holder or something like that, right? But I think one of the things is that that kept us going was the fact that across the 2-3 home and lifestyle kind of categories that we had, we're pretty evenly spread, from a fashion 50% as well as a home 50%. And home then took off, obviously, because I think one of the things, 2-3 things happened. One, people working from home has accelerated that entire part of I want to change furnishing, I want to change my decor, and that typically happens, the cycle is slightly longer, maybe 8 months or 10 months or even a year. And I think that the very fact that one stays in your house for 24 hours instead of the actual 4 hours a day or 5 hours a day or whatever, excluding the sleeping part, that kind of saw home take up a lot of our kind of consumers mind space, saying that I want to be looking at redoing my house and spending a lot more time. And also what people would say, like a Zoom background cleanup kind of thing, can I make a little pretty thing at the back because I'm on Zoom all throughout the day? And so decor started doing really, really well. So I think and the entire the move in terms of channels itself, I think, was a little bit more easier because we'd already invested a lot in our entire online infrastructure. So for us, it's just a matter of just switching on our Omni, which we had done, and where we were actually now looking at shipping from stores, shipping from, because of also the earlier this thing, a lot of couriers weren't working and not delivering to containment zones and stuff like that. So I think from a consumer perspective, while we did see a drop in some of the categories, other categories did make up for it.
Okay. No, Ankush made a very interesting point, saying that when you're gifting, You still need to come to the store. Rest of the stuff can be online. So when you have a huge product category, right, like Chumbak has, right, how do you ensure that people discover? I don't know, in the last 3 months, probably you have some of those still iconic stores on Indranagar, for example.
Yeah, we have. Yeah.
I don't know what the footfalls are. So how has this change affected your product mix?
So honestly, for us,
Can you share?
honestly, for us, while gifting has been extremely large, gifting actually has its ups and downs in the offline world, especially for us. So we'd see huge amount of gifting in the October, November, December kind of season. We'd see some amount of gifting during Valentine's Day, but then the rest of the stuff, which was just the typical anniversary, birthday gifting, or the no reason gifting, what we call, would happen online even pre-pandemic. So I think
Right.
what happened was gifting for us is a lot of it is online, and because of the very fact that we can ship from any place and it's pretty fast. What we noticed was actually very interesting, that even the small levels of gifting that were happening earlier, kind of in offline, kind of declined. A lot
Right.
of the people who came in to buy offline, almost about 85% of them, which is up from about 70%.
Yeah.
So almost 85, 90%, in fact, I would dare say, was self-purchase. People wanted to come into the stores to say, hey, listen, I'm coming out after a long time. I want to feel good. I want to touch and feel. I want to pick up stuff, and for myself. So a lot of this post-pandemic stuff in terms of offline was, hey, self-gratification before gifting. Online gifting continues. Online, the gifting completely happens. That didn't change. We saw some amounts of peaks here and there, but online continues some to for gifting as well. But stores, we saw a huge amount of people coming in saying that, listen, it makes me happy rather than me gifting it to somebody, kind of thing. So from that perspective, I think we're slightly different. But yeah, I think offline has always played this role of me first kind of thing.
Bit of retail therapy. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Honestly, it makes me happy. I come to a
Yeah.
place which has lovely music, which I can listen to. The stores are brightly lit. It's colorful. I'm leaving my troubles outside and coming in and shopping, or even browsing for that matter, right? So, yeah.
Ankush, tell me, I mean, now in the last 3 months, once this lockdown, all those restrictions been lifted, do you have the same number of stores? Have you expanded? Are you present in Bangalore, outside of Bangalore? What all are you present? And tell us about the mix of what are you doing online to attract people?
Right. So in terms of our retail strategy has been quite, goes slowly. We want to create experience stores. So some of our stores are 12,000, 15,000 square feet. So we wanted to create an experience store, just as I was selling offline as well, just to change the perception of how mithai can be bought. The whole experience of why mithai should be a dark and dingy store, give the opulence of the customer deserves. So hence we've been at 12 stores. The store which typically got affected was our airport store, but that again is back to normal. So our retail presence has been consistent, and we're actually increasing retail because there are so many pockets of demand where people actually want to go, hubs of apartments, and mainly apartments, right? That's become our biggest hub for us to go in terms of understanding a retail platform, where we know that one is we're going to get an offline clientele, and of course huge online clientele, because our store very easily kind of doubles up as an online Swiggy, Zomato accessible location, and that's a huge aspect of our growth story as well. From an online perspective, we've been on, say as a category, the biggest problem with us is shelf life. If I send sweets, no matter where I am, the concept of selling fresh sweets is defeated when I have to send it from here to Calcutta, for example. But the back end, we have kind of done a lot of work in terms of changed our packaging from a technical aspect, something called manufactured atmospheric packing, where you remove the oxygen and put in nitrogen as well as carbon dioxide, and it increases shelf life 3 times and keeping the product intact. So we are able to increase the shelf life by doing some innovation at the back end. Obviously improving, delivery in general has improved a lot. So hence we are able to do good numbers on a Flipkart or an Amazon, and and we get orders from places we've not even heard of in India, right? From Kashmir to Kanyakumari, literally, and the repeatability is good. We have a 4.5 plus rating. Another very interesting model I'm trying out is in partnerships, right, where I'm consolidated with a strategic partnership with companies which have a huge range of cloud kitchens everywhere. So I kind of go and say I have a range of product, and can I be a supermarket of sorts on the cloud. So these places become can activate, double up as a Swiggy, Zomato, Dunzo, Amazon only for me. So I have that and that becomes right now in Bangalore. I started in Chennai, I started in Bombay, and these are all dark stores, dark kitchens. So where I send my product and I make it deliverable within those areas, and that's also been a very successful model. Very very low hanging fruit without too much capital investment, and online is a very easy way to kind of expand from a marketing perspective. You target your customer around those areas. People start, and with us, once you try the product, then the repeatability becomes, once you have confidence in your product, then you just have to get people to try your product, and then repeatability becomes quite easy. So I think it's been while I say this, it's very important to also have some experience centers. So I think offline, even I think Vivek was saying this, where he was saying that you don't have to have 16 stores in Bangalore when everything is online, and I completely agree. I think you have to have stores in some of the key locations for people to know and understand you exist as a brand. So offline becomes an experience store where a brand flagship stores can be there, and then online can become your way to really penetrate the market in a big way, in a cheap way, in a big way.
So hearing you both, it more and more validates, pandemic or no pandemic, you still need to have presence in both offline and online if you want to be a bigger brand of sorts, right? Because experience really doesn't translate unless you have the offline presence where you can touch and feel and meet people and be in that environment. That's in complete contrast to this entire D2C momentum or euphoria that is going on, where most of the brands you're dealing with are digitally native brands. How do you account for something like that? Has the consumer behavior shifted in India? People are still trusting brands just by seeing the feeds on Facebook and Insta, and then just buying off it even though they've not heard of it. What is working for those guys in your mind?
I think, from a perspective of the kind of consumers that they're talking to, I think are much younger. They are, forget the brands being digitally native. Consumers themselves are digitally native first, right? So I think a lot of exploration is happening on social media in terms of, mainly Instagram and some levels on Facebook, where consumers are coming in and seeing these kind of new brands, which are in very, focused kind of the 18 to 30 kind of age group, where they're selling them either wellness or beauty or even electronics nowadays and stuff like that. But I think one of the things is that even in India, a lot of these brands that are there, which from a D2C perspective, who have grown online only, have 99% of the time also a year or 2 or even 3 years after they've had success online, have also wanted to add offline to their arsenal. You cannot build completely only 100% online in this country, especially. You still need a touch and feel. You still need that kind of this thing. So where even if they don't set up their own stores, distribution is, there's nothing that's as big as distribution, offline distribution in our country, especially because a lot of these are the FMCG kind of categories. A lot of them are, categories which are actually helped by the traditional distribution system. So I think while a lot of them are doing fantastic numbers and great growth, you see even some of the largest kind of companies who are D2C worldwide as well. And you look at Allbirds, or you look at even Warby Parker, both of them who are fighting in IPOs. After many years, they're still not had luck with profitability as well. While scale has been beautiful and wonderful, they've not had very much luck with profitability worldwide. I'm hoping in India, a lot of the newer brands are coming up will do that. But I think that's the thing, right? That the grass is always greener on the other side. For traditional offline first brands like ourselves, we're always going to be looking at online and saying that, hey, listen, if others can do it, why can't we? If that's where we're going to be scaling, why can't we? And what is it that we're missing out in terms of our own understanding, our own talent pool, and our own product and service in that sense? And the other way around as well, saying that, listen, I have a fantastic online brand, I'm doing really well, but there is always going to be that itch that I can grow this business offline as well. And that's the game, right? Saying that offline trying to understand the online world and online trying to understand the offline world. And that's this constant struggle that's going to happen in this country before you have the large winners. And for that, you're going to have at least 100, 200 brands closing down, trying to do both, in that sense, and succeed, and losing their focus of what they were good at and trying and failing at the other thing that they were good at.
No, that brings me to the next question to you.
No, I just
Go on, Akash.
Yeah, no, I'd like to, in terms of just exactly what Vivek was saying, that the brand which comes to mind is Domino's, right? Now you see the kind of brand presence, the mind share Domino's has. Is it because it is, of course, it's known for its delivery, like Domino's pizza at home, and that's its USP. But how did it create that? By having a store in every locality in the country, right? You go, no matter where you are, right? You go to a Shillong, you go to a place in Kerala, anywhere, right? You will see a small little Domino's there. So just having a offline presence everywhere just cements the brand, the mind share of the brand in the consumer, and then turning them in a repeatable online journey is a lot easier. So I just feel that the stickiness of an offline, if you acquire a customer through an offline channel versus an online channel, I don't have data, but it's just a gut feeling. It's a lot stronger when you have an offline customer and converting into online than the reverse.
Right. Now I was going to ask, this is very because you guys are close to the customers. The kind of data that you can pick up online is very different. I mean, Vivek mentioned about being millennials, digitally born people. You can't afford to ignore that audience as well, right? Because so how are you catering to it? Because earlier in a conversation, Ankush, you also mentioned about how even in the digital world, there's so many, like there's a social commerce model, there's a content to commerce model. There's so many different ways of marketing, positioning yourself, helping people discover, right? And then fulfillment, instantaneous fulfillment, right? That can happen. So, so everybody is kind of forced to, in some ways, adapt to this sort of new normal, right? Where online is here to stay, and it's juxtaposed with your offline world. Of course, selling online is a lot cheaper too compared to offline, right? You don't need to have stores, etc. You don't need to have retail salespeople, etc. But there are different kinds of challenges. So how has been your sort of what specific steps that you guys took in terms of either understanding customers or rediscovering audiences, however you want to communicate it? Because you can't afford to stay away from your Insta, for example, for Chumbak or even for Unsweets, right? I don't know if those audience belong to you, but certainly for Chumbak, I think your Insta audiences are relevant as well. And I'm sure it must be the case for Anand Sweets as well, because people are spending a lot more time online right now, right? How have you sort of adapted specifically, and what has happened in the back end, right, from a supply chain perspective, right?
I think, this entire omnichannel bit is there that we've been looking at, and, we've been working on it for the past 3-4 years, trying to understand what is the best way. And I think thanks to the pandemic, it accelerated all our efforts that we switched on. While we had the capabilities a long time, I don't think maybe about 3-4 months before the pandemic started is when we were actually testing out this entire thing of literally, while from an idea perspective of saying that, hey, buy online and ship from a store sounds quite simple enough. I think there are two big, challenges that one faces and one faced during this transition. One was obviously the entire logistical challenge, which is actually, in my mind, a slightly easier challenge to crack. But the other one is tech. and understanding the tech of how you will maintain your inventory and how you'll maintain stock. And I could imagine Ankush, especially with with stuff that has shelf life, it's even more difficult than something like our my sofa will not go bad in 6 months. But I think somewhere along the way, what's been the case is that this entire movement is a lot of investments in tech and a lot of investments in understanding logistics. So how did it actually help and benefit us? I think in 2-3 ways, right? One is ensuring that consumers, while they're sitting at home right now, aren't actually distracted by travel, going to office, going to work, this, that, and all, and then hey, come back, go and come, and 2 days have passed, and then your parcel or your shipment is here. One of the things that we've learned is that what worked for large marketplaces, even like an Amazon, was the entire fact that they had Prime on, right? And same day delivery or maximum next day delivery. And a lot of consumers are come to even small brands such as ours and say, hey, listen, if Amazon can give me next day delivery, why can't you? And not really understanding the logistics, what goes behind doing a same day or a next day delivery. But with turning on all our 75 stores on online and exposing their inventory to our online consumers, we were able to do same day deliveries and next day deliveries, and which we are right now. But I think the huge jump that came for us was actually exposing our stock to even an Amazon or a Myntra, to any of the marketplaces, and having not just one central warehouse, but now 75 locations across the country that can ship your product. So typically that really helps in terms of consumer satisfaction, because they're getting it fast, and that really makes a huge difference. So I think this entire investment in terms of tech and understanding the logistics behind it has helped us grow in that sense. Because today, if a store is doing 100 rupees, almost 35 rupees is coming in from the Omni part of it, and 65% is coming from people who are actually walking in. So I think that's really like a eye opener for me. And the other thing is, like, honestly, you have to change with where the consumer is going. And I don't think consumer today wants their the other day we started our pilot of almost a month of WhatsApp shopping, and consumers are new to it, little bit in terms of hesitation, but they're getting onto it. But I saw some stats with one of my friends in another company. It was almost 13-14% of their business is coming in. And this is like a 1,000 crore company. 13% of their business is coming in from WhatsApp in the last 1 year when during the lockdown. And that was phenomenal news to me, saying that listen, consumers are willing to do this. And while traditionally we've done this on a very offline kind of way, where that you call up the consumer saying, madam, we've got something new, and you come in and try and that kind of stuff. But the entire bot-based kind of WhatsApp shopping, where eventually it's the bot that's actually saying, hey, what are you looking for today? Okay, this is the option. What are you looking for? And then immediately moving on to a customer care executive who will then say, okay, here, we will receive a call back, get a call back, and then say, even a video saying that this is what it is. It surprised me in terms of how many people are actually willing to shop that way. And I feel that social commerce will be within a year, maybe 10-15% of our business. So I think we're pretty excited about what these, newer kind of, as I'm calling them, post-pandemic channels are pushing us to do. And it's really exciting.
Ankush, what's your experience? Do you think Switch can be sold on WhatsApp or through?
Of course. I think there is huge potential, and just taking a leaf from what Vivek said, where before the pandemic, offline was open your store, open one format of the store. Online was, which for us, it was Swiggy, Zomato, right? The pandemic has forced us to think of what other channels I can explore, what other websites I can put my product. Offline, what are the modules I can introduce? So that way, it has really pushed us out of our comfort zone of sorts and understood the true, and I was saying this, the true essence of omni-channel is before the pandemic, it was only online and offline. I think after the pandemic, there is 2-3 levels below that. An omni-channel can start within online. What channels can be there? Within offline, what formats can be there? I mean, that truly starts becoming, you're the brand which is really going to everywhere the customer is present at, in every format. So I think that has been a big learning for us, and right now we're in 8 odd I would say marketplaces, commerce, apartment commerce apps versus our apps, and another 5 in the pipeline. And even offline, we're looking at smaller format stores, pre-packed format stores. So this is what is happening. And coming back to the point of what we've learned as well, we don't have the liberty of a one-day delivery even now. We have a 45-minute window. So for my Swiggy and Zomato and all that. So there how do we make our stores 45-minute enabled? Because I don't want to outdo a Swiggy, but I can't, if somebody is waiting for a gulab jamun after their meal, I can't say you order it now, you'll be given in that slot. They'll say, get lost, I'll order it from Swiggy, right? So how do I compete against them by not really compete but offering the same service? So pandemic has really pushed us out of our comfort zone, and for me has really redefined omnichannel into going to so many different levels with really what omnichannel means to me.
So it's become very apparent that online has become so important. You have to change your supply chain strategy. You have to look out supply chain, I'm saying what happens to your people, right? Because the people are tuned to be, you have a retail workforce. Do you have to retrain them into doing something else? Did you have to change your supply chain partners? From a people perspective, what was the biggest sort of challenge? How did you guys go about dealing with this new
I think from a store staff perspective, there was a lot of retraining for sure, in terms of, one figuring out the system, and one, you're also in lean hours sitting, waiting around for consumers in a post-pandemic world. You do have the kind of flexibility. So there is, they get incentivized on, how well, in terms of the orders are shipped. So there's no breakage, there's no stuff like that. They're also incentivized, for example, some of the larger items, which we don't, for example, in an 800 square foot store, if we have a smaller store, which is 800 square feet, we're not able to stock a lot of the furniture that we sell. They're encouraged and incentivized to take orders while showing them, on their laptops or the tablets, showing that, but they place the orders online. So they're also, in terms of some amount of retraining. The other part of it, as I said, logistics wasn't so difficult in terms of, they're also, as we're also, Ankush mentioned, 45 minutes kind of delivery. We're also trying out a 2-hour delivery and stuff like that in some categories. But I think the biggest kind of thing that took a long time, at least like 3 to 4 months for us, was the entire tech bit. And, trying to make sure that, not looking at them as, one centralized kind of inventory stack that you have, but also single stores that have access to, which are opened across. So how does one happen? How does hopping happen? This store doesn't get it, then this store gets it. This doesn't have it inventory, because not all stores have all products.
Yes.
So I think one of the biggest things for us was the tech implementation of this, which took us 3 to 4 months. I mean, it took us a month to even understand what would be the possible scenarios before even starting to code and, looking at so now there's a pretty advanced, by now, I think in the last 8 months that we've been doing it, there's an advanced AI that's actually working behind the scenes to understand where the order should go, what kind of this thing, if there are split orders, how does it work? So a lot of that is something that we've learned only in the last 2 years.
How is, so go on, Ankush, please.
Yeah. No, in terms of with us, right, it's very surprising that the tech savviness of the youth today is, and when I talk about all the people I work with, people in my sales team, people in my stores, it's unbelievable how tech savvy they already are, right? And then when you give them something to adopt, it actually so much. Everybody has a smartphone in their hands. Everybody has ordered on an Amazon, on a Flipkart. So for us, and for us, the transition from being like completely non-tech to tech, now completely tech, has been quite easy, at least from an operational perspective, because that really shows, like, even like you show somebody a screen, the first thing they'd want to do is scroll the screen with their hand, right? That's how their mind is started to tune. So I think tech it's something which has helped us survive, and the people around us have adopted in a very, very easy way. So that is also a big change which has happened, which we have realized has happened in the last 4-5 years after the whole smartphone revolution in India.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. Tell me this, like in the online world, to compensate for the sort of slowness, how have you sort of invested in customer acquisition, right, or in demand creation, right? Because I think you both are in different categories and have very different approaches, right? Because in the store, at least, like you said, people can come and check what products are there, what's new, etc. If you're selling through Swiggy, right, I have to scroll through. I need to know Anand Sweets. I need to scroll through, or I search and find out who comes top of the sort of recommendations. How are you dealing with these challenges? Because how do you ensure that I have launched something new? Do you want to try out that kind of stuff, particularly in your marketplace? In your website, it's very different. I just want to hear from you. How are you doing it in your website, and how are you doing it on your one side and third party side?
So I think we've looked at digital marketing, in not such a serious way, even back until 3 years back, right, where we said our stores were everything, and Swiggy, Zomato, whatever was happening was riding off on our stores alone. Now, since we're going to so many different channels where have to be discovered first online rather than offline, what was our model earlier, I think the first thing we did was increase our marketing budgets. Right? We hired a team. We understood that, hey, it's to be relevant to the digital first customer, I have to be visible first. So visibility became a huge issue, right? So in terms of, we had clear defined metrics and a budget of whatever channels we are. First, the idea is to be visible, right? First, go to customers who. So again, it depends on the funnel you're targeting. So the discovery had a different messaging. Somebody who's within our system, right? How do you upsell them, cross sell them? So I think we started to get more granular with our strategy. And if you ask any tech entrepreneur of today, that is 101 of what a marketing funnel looks like, how marketing should be done. But for an offline business going online, these were learnings and have been very effective for us. In as you said, just making sure that how are we portraying ourselves to the right customer with the right messaging, with the right product portfolio. So that segmentation of the customer is becoming very important, which we are discovering with time.
Vivek, you want to weigh in with your views here?
I think in terms of this entire, how is your marketing changed or something like that, I think one of the things is that from a post-pandemic world, obviously we've kind of slowed down a whole bunch on our offline marketing, which we used to do. But I think the other thing that we've kind of opened up right now is also spending with our partners, which are our marketplaces, such that because unless one of the things that you mentioned was that online is cheaper. Online is definitely not cheaper than offline. While offline has its rents and fixed costs like that, online also has a whole amount of costs. I mean, today I can set up a website and have the best website and the best tech and the best logistics. Unless people are going to come to the website and shop, it's just going to be a ghost town. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I think a lot of the large social media companies are the ones who are making billions during this kind of time. And so, yeah, I mean, to agree with Ankush, we've got like this huge kind of marketing program that runs behind the scenes to actually target consumers who are both from an offline world and both from an online world as well. And so it's complex enough that it gives us a whole level of insight and detail that offline can't. So and kind of segregation of the kind of consumer and being able to target it, just niches of consumers that become like a single niche could be like 1 million people. So I think that kind of stuff that with online is like something that's really helped us get to the consumer faster.
No, this is a very important point both of you are making, because since you're forced to look at other options other than offline and the kind of people that's required, data, I mean, short of saying everybody needs to be a data scientist, right, in your team, right? Because everybody is working towards understanding what people want, how do I get them faster, cheaper, and what's my competition doing, etc. Right? So in terms of your internal, the way you're organized, has anything changed in terms of your organizational structure, the kind of talent pool you have, the availability of tech talent or training them? What's been, I mean, it's a
No,
big shift, right? We,
no, definitely it's been a big shift, but I think obviously some of the talent, some of the highest amount of hiring that has happened in the last 1 year has been in tech and digital, and getting good talent of forget even getting good talent, getting talent nowadays in tech and digital for an offline first kind of brands and other brands that are not tech completely is it's ridiculous. The kind of we can have a completely different 2 hour forum on just understanding what people are getting paid and why they it's difficult to hire people today in tech. But I think the changes were a lot of changes from our end were made mainly in trying to understand that there are some kind of categories that do offline, do well offline, and those kind of categories were defocused for the last 6 months, saying that by the time let's wait till the offline stores get back to even 80% of their normal, which is right now they're at, and focus completely on products or categories that are doing really well online. So like even our inventory buying and our supply chain and all of that moved to an online thing. And thankfully, I think the team has been buying, and the entire merchandising team has been doing that. So I don't think that's a very huge personnel change or training change or any of that stuff. It's just the company's focus moving a little bit in towards categories that do well online. And of course, as I said, the investments that we made in tech were a whole lot more than what you would have made in normal, even in that sense.
yeah, so clearly your digital team is also expanded. That's what I was alluding to, right? And then once you expand a team, then there are expectations as to how best to mine, because data becomes important to sell in the online world, right? How much you're spending on your Facebook or otherwise, etc.
Yeah.
Ankush, what's been your experience? Because traditionally, sweet shop is a sweet shop, and of course, you've taken that marketing sort of leap of faith and branding and all of that stuff, right? But when it comes to digital, it's an entirely a different ball game, right? How is your people mix today? Right? Do you have more digital people that you've added in there?
So we our offline is very labor, is very people intensive. So that obviously has the chunk of it. But what has changed for us is that we've set up a dedicated team. Earlier, everybody was a jack of all. ये भी कर रहा है, वो भी कर रहा है, handle this also, because we were just trying to formulate, and as I said, offline was an afterthought for us. But now we don't have the liberty to sit and think that he will handle offline and he'll handle online and everything mission mash. So we've started kind of becoming being very aware that we need dedicated teams, dedicated people, dedicated resources. Even if we can't hire them internally, we associate with companies, we associate with agencies, people who bring in that expertise. Why should, and for me the entire idea is, until I understand it, until my company understands it, and as a futile ground for me to invest in my own team, can I get that expertise from outside, take the business to a point where we start understanding the value, and then start getting internally to people to carry that forward. So this has been a mix of hiring as well as tying up with the right kind of people in digital, in tech, in ops. So that kind of a hybrid model is something we're looking at, and it's working fairly well for us.
Fantastic. I have we have about 7-8 minutes or so, and we have few questions come from our audience. So there is a question from Srividya Sridharan. How do you see the next generation, quote unquote, the teenagers of today, taking to offline shopping a decade or two from now? Would a D2C model outweigh an offline presence? This is something that we spoke about.
Yeah, I think they will continue to be offline. I mean, offline is never going to die. So even for in a country like the US, where Amazon is Amazon and the behemoth that is there, offline will always continue. Consumers will always want to go out. Consumers will always want to go out for shopping, and it's like this, thing that's never going to do. Brands will look at it differently. Brands may not look at it the way, for example, a Bata started 100 years ago, and maybe in India, maybe as long as that, and have 4,000 points of distribution and none of that. I think a D2C company would look at it very differently today, starting today, saying that while I'm looking at being an online first company, I'll still like to have experience centers. Instead of having 20 stores in Bangalore, you maybe have 2 stores in a Bangalore, 3 stores in a Bangalore, or even 1, in that sense. But offline, from my perspective, will always going to be there, and it's going to go hand in hand.
All right. Great. Ankush, do you have anything?
Totally agree. And I think the point Vivek mentioned earlier, like people want to come indulge themselves, and that indulgence can never be substituted online. The touch and feel of things, the experience of going out, the family time, the me time, all of that cannot be substituted sitting in front of your screen. And so it's never going to go out of fashion, never going to go, it's always going to coexist with online.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are in different categories. If I'm a Girias or selling electronic stuff, I come and look for deals offline, right? Which TV, what model, how does it look? And then I go buy something cheaper online, right? That's how it's been for some of these guys. But I guess they are very different categories. And then, you're an impulse purchase category, perhaps may not apply to you at all. But if you're an electronic gadget seller, I think you're buying stuff online because the discounts are heavy from the marketplaces. But at the same time, still you want to come to the store and see what is the latest, because you can't figure out everything online, right? You don't know what an LED TV looks like, or you don't know what a plasma looks like.
See, high value purchases will always be that, even in anything, like even when we sell furniture, furniture is 25,000-30,000 rupees, people will still want to come in and buy.
Yeah.
I think what will happen is but there are brands, offline brands who are, doing that well enough. For example, Chroma is one of them. Chroma is doing a fantastic job of actually, battling this entire thing of checking price offline and buying online kind of thing. Checking the product and then checking price and everything. They're doing a really good job of it, from matching prices to offering, other services like installation free or warranties or, all of that stuff. So when consumers are coming, still able to this thing, I think brands and companies need to evolve and saying that this is it is what it is. Are consumers going to look for a lower price in this country? Definitely they will. So it's not that I can sit back and say, hey, listen, I can't do anything. You have to learn to adapt to it. And if you're going to have differential pricing, you're going to have differential pricing. So either you're saying I'm creating experience or I'm creating, this thing. So I think brands and multi-branded stores need to actually embrace newer technologies to help, combat that.
Understood. Thanks. There's a question from Bikram. He's asking how to build an effective supply chain for a FMCG startup. Is it by bootstrapping? Any suggestions? Right. Assuming this question is about how do you think about a supply chain for a FMCG startup? Any thoughts around it?
So we've been delving into getting into FMCG. Right now we're looking at it aggressively. So FMCG is a very, very costly affair, right? And especially in times like these, every company is creating products for FMCG. You go to get noticed in the shelf becomes almost close to impossible unless you have the marketing muscle, unless you have a complex distribution network, great packaging, a stellar sales force, and you have discounts to give across the value chain till it ultimately reaches the customer. So unless you're sitting on a hello. Yeah. So FMCG is a very, very expensive game. So for me, in terms of, and based on my experience, while it is important, I think the easier way to try your product is working, not working, is to go through marketplaces. Marketplaces give you access to the entire country within a click, right? You go there and then you market it in the right way and that expertise is available. So that's a great way to try your product, build your brand, try and see if this is working, pivot quickly to see what is working, what is not, because it doesn't cost so much money online versus offline. And then once you have built once you've built a good enough brand online, you have your production going, then you slowly start putting these products offline into select stores, try and get the consumer feedback, and it's a wait and watch game. It's something which you need to build the customer confidence. If you kind of go you can't go in all out unless you have $1 billion in your bank account. So it's I would definitely suggest try online and then be very methodical about offline, and and it should work.
Yeah. No, fantastic. I think it answers another question that came from Pooja. What should we consider as a new entrant, more online or offline? I think your suggestion is kind of bang on. Vivek, you want to add anything more to it as a startup? What should they look at? Should they go completely online?
Honestly, I mean, two things. It would depend on what product, obviously, and what is the product or service. But anything in the consumer space today, I'd start online. Your costs are far lesser. Start online and then move to an offline kind of a thing, because you're not going to be able to set up stores, there's rent, there's all of that. So, yeah.
There's one more question from Roshan. He says that both Ankush and Vivek are saying that footfall reduced during pandemic and they had to shift to being digital to satisfy them, but the cost increases as well, like in digital. How did you manage this increase in costs? I mean, so the way I interpret it is, has tech become a big investment for both? Digital has become a big cost component for both.
So for us, actually, tech has always been a large component of our business. I mean, one of the things is that if I could be faulted was for over investing in tech, and my team would always kind of question the kind of investments that we make in tech. But I think inside out today, all of us are tech companies. If you look at it, I happen to be selling furniture or fashion, and Ankush happens to be selling sweets. We're all tech companies trying to understand what the best we can do and how can we get our consumer to come in and try a product and deliver it to them at the fastest and cheapest way possible. The entire stuff that happens at the back end is driven by tech, from your inventory to your everything, and there is the amount of data that we all get and we sit on is only driven by tech. So I think, how did we manage to do this? We're still, honestly, the honest answer is we're still managing. There are increased costs and we've definitely taken a hit on our bottom lines, but I think these are investments that, one, we were forced to do, and second, I think which will pay off in the next 6 months. So if I didn't make these investments, we would be in a far more difficult place than we are today. So I think tech is something that is definitely required for all companies.
So you're saying that in addition to eating sweets, software is also eating the world.
Yeah, and for us, sorry.
Yeah, go on. Yes.
Yeah,
please.
for us in terms of, I don't see tech as, at least for us, I don't see it as an investment or an added cost, but it is the return on whatever investment in tech I have done has been far more pleasing and far more quick compared to an offline. Offline is a very expensive affair. So for me to expand the business, I'm sitting on a bunch of stores, and I have two options. Either I open stores, which is stupid, foolish, or I go online and with literally 1/10 the money and double the return. So for me, the increased cost also meant increased return and faster return. So I look at tech as necessary and great for business, for us, for somebody like us, for sure.
Great. One final question to both of you, starting with you, Ankush. Now, when things getting back to normal, whatever that means, are you going to increase your stores? What is going to increase for you?
So, right. I think since we're talking about omnichannel, offline, online, both very important. And I think online the pace at which we grow online will be way faster than offline. But having said that, we'll be very, very cautious about also keeping our offline footprint growing, because I think that's a model which has worked for us and which will continue to work for us. So I think it's the growth will be, we will have a parallel story to see, but of course the pace at which we do both online will be much faster than an offline.
Vivek, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I agree. While we're not saying no to offline in the sense that, from an expansion perspective, I think we will take things a little bit slower than usual. There was a time as recent as, like a month before the pandemic hit, where we were opening a store every 10 days somewhere in the country. And while that pace was fantastic and we loved it and business was happening, I think today it's not just us, right? The entire world has changed. The entire there is no going back to a pre-pandemic time. So I think our kind of cautious optimism on retail will hopefully help us open a couple of stores. But as Ankush said, nothing in the near future which will, while actually in this pandemic we've opened about 3 stores, but I don't think it's going to be the kind of pace that offline stores were opening earlier for any brand offline, in fact.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, there's another question from Deepthi. I think we kind of answered it. Is it a good approach to build trust via marketplaces like Amazon or Flipkart for your products, or focus more on your website first?
Honestly, a mix of both. To answer that question, Deepthi, I think one of the things is that trust definitely comes in from your own website as well, and nobody tells a story better than you. But whatever you do, the amount of money that you spend, you will never get 20 million, 30 million people to your website in a day. And for that, you do need to go to the marketplaces and work with them as well. So for me, it's a mix of both. It's not just going to be one versus the other.
Fantastic. I think there's also a bit of a comment from Srividya. She said that this is to you, Ankush. She misses going to a sweet store and asking, "Thora sample milega bhaiya," which can't happen online.
Yeah. So the discovery still happens offline, but even that is changing, where there are companies which are offering samples like Smitten, which recently got funded, and we're like, why not we look at mithai? So different aspects of getting into consumers, the whole tasting center of it. So yeah, all the options are available. It's how we kind of how much we adopt into our business. But yeah, that kind of experience is hopefully going to start getting online too.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for your time. So from what we understood, offline is here to stay, however small it is. You can't replace offline by online, but online is forced upon us. It's signs of the times. We have to adapt, and tech is here to stay as well, right? Wonderful points, and thanks for your participation, and thanks for taking a time out, both to the audience and the panelists, and hope to see you all again soon in the next session.
Thank you all very much. It was very interesting. Thanks, Vidya. Thanks all.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Ankush.
Thanks, Ankush.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.